Welcome to ETMA Tech Talk, the podcast that unveils forces shaping the future of tech. In each episode, we bring together visionary leaders, forward-thinking innovators, and game-changing experts who are transforming the enterprise tech landscape. Listen to insider perspectives, dive into bold stories of digital transformation, and strategic breakthroughs that turn challenges into competitive advantages. This podcast is your key to mastering the future of technology. Here is your host, ETMA's Managing Director, Joe Basili.
Wondering why that telecom invoice is longer than your last vacation itinerary? Our episode features a candid conversation with Tellennium, a company that's simplifying the complexity of not just telecom expense and mobility, but utility, SaaS, and other complex telecom expenses, mobility expenses, and other categories of enterprise spend. They're process-driven, trusted by the Fortune 1000 firms to manage millions in telecom and IT spend, from UEM and invoice audits to cloud optimization. They drive savings. But here's the real value. They don't just stop at reporting, they act. Today's guest is Chief Revenue Officer of Tellennium, where he leads sales and marketing for a respected player in the enterprise expense management space. And stick around, because he just might drop a surprising story on how enterprises can save millions of dollars on their expenses. Welcome, Shawn Veitz.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Great to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your specialty areas?
Yeah, Tellennium is a little unique in the expense management world in that we process telecom, utility, SaaS licensing, what we call complex expenses in our management of things platform, Joe. So to take that one step further, we automate the invoice collection, auditing, payment, and then provide expertise around each one of those particular services.
Are there any particular market segments, like within the enterprise, that you tend to focus on that seem to be sweet for you?
Yeah, so just naturally through Tellennium's history, we've made a couple of decisions. One decision was that we're not going to offshore our support, where much of our competitors have in that. And so that has naturally aligned us to gain a lot of healthcare customers, also a lot of finance customers due to that. And then naturally, as you start to build that, healthcare tends to talk to other healthcare customers, and you just kind of start the snowball rolling effect where it grows. So about 50% of our customers make up healthcare, and another large portion make up finance companies.
Why those areas? Why are they maybe opposed to offshore?
Well, I think it's a data security thing. So anytime you open up your code to outside resources, let's say developers. So if we were to outsource our code development to overseas or offshore it, that opens up 80% more attacks on the platform by just opening that code up. So by being able to lock it down to US only personnel for the development on that, it really helps make it more secure overall.
So one of the concerns is the cyber security threats. And then are there other issues with regard to healthcare in terms of security and compliance factors like HIPAA?
Yeah, absolutely. So you get HIPAA, you get PHI. Traditionally, telecom utilities did not come with much PHI, but we're seeing more healthcare companies wanting to process translation services. And many times with these translation services, they are taking patient names, date of birth in that call record so they can allocate it back out to the correct medical center for that. So definitely PHI is coming into play with that. We often fill out questionnaires. Does this data ever leave the United States? And by us being able to mark no to that, it helps us win those opportunities.
I mentioned at the top when I was introducing you that you've got over 2 decades of experience. So how have you seen the market and Tellennium evolve with the market over time?
Yeah, so when I first got started in the industry, I never thought I would stay in the industry for nearly 2 decades in there. But when we first started, it was all on-prem, right? So everyone would buy their expense management solution, downloaded in their data servers, and then upload invoice. And every time a new invoice reader came out, you had to upload that into your software. I remember going through the phases of having to convince customers to move to a SaaS model on the cloud. And there was so much security concerns with that, and clients didn't want to, and actually making the argument, showing them, here's how much it's costing you to host this yourself. Here's what your cost would be with SaaS, and showing them paperwork. And of course, now you don't even get into the on-prem discussions. With that, it's all, everyone wants a SaaS-based application.
Gotcha. So a big component that you've seen that's changed is software versus SaaS. Other factors that have changed within the enterprise in terms of spend that you're managing?
I would say overall, telecom has simplified, right? You used to have these large, complex networks throughout, but now you're getting large data pipes that you're able to manage with software on where this data pipe goes and what allocates the bandwidth for it. So I think telecom's simplifying overall. But what we've seen across the enterprise is you first had, when I came on the scene, just wireline. And then you had the introduction of wireless come onto the scene. And those were in two different platforms. You had wireline, wireless. And now, as it continues to evolve, you have wireline that has wireless backup. And you have more traditional, no one has a desk phone anymore. They all have a cell phone or something like that. And now you're getting Zoom licenses. You're moving into a SaaS-based model, right? So that has created the need to be able to support complex spend and ensure that your software is agile enough to keep up with these different changing support models that these vendors are offering.
So you're saying, in addition to the telecom, you also have to manage a lot of these SaaS, third-party SaaS licenses from companies, because the enterprise clients, the end users, have lots of SaaS licenses.
Yeah, a lot of SaaS licensing, that's pulling into telecom. And so if you're going to allocate telecom charges, you have to be able to support SaaS with that. And then we've also experienced a lot of customers consider telecom utilities. And so then they say, well, we just want you to do this with all of our utilities. And naturally, that's how we got the creation of management of things, which is our platform, right? So that's the play on the words.
So rather than the Internet of Things, you're saying you're just the management of things. Gotcha.
That's right. MOT is a trademark that we've gone out and taken a play on that to say, hey, we're not just traditional telecom anymore, that we manage really anything that's complex within the enterprise, any complex invoice.
For today, as some of the biggest challenges facing the market segment?
I think that overall, companies are trying to streamline their applications, right? With the introduction of SaaS in there are so many software, and security departments are overwhelmed with what's changing. So if you can simplify or combine multiple solutions, so what I was saying is you have a telecom expense management, a mobile expense management, a utility expense management potentially. So the more you can simplify, we're seeing that. We're also seeing organizations ensuring that all of the systems talk to each other. Long gone are the days of wanting to do things manual, saying, hey, we have this system for our ordering and this other system for something else, right? So integrating with like ServiceNow, we're seeing that, and providing a good overall end user experience that their employees aren't having to go to 150 different applications. They can go to one application and get what they need. So I think that's a challenge that we're seeing across the enterprises that platform providers like Tellennium are continuing to address with the enterprises.
So the idea of visibility and one screen to see it all is a big play for you then?
Not only just one screen, but maybe they have a ServiceNow, maybe they have some other application that their end users are used to going. They may not know who Tellennium is, and so they want to send their end user into ServiceNow and to use their preferred vendors like Tellennium or others, right? So one stop for their end users to go to. And the more we can come in alignment with that, we help these organizations overcome that struggle that they're experiencing of providing that good end user or employee experience.
And as a chief revenue officer, I'm sure you made tons of sales calls where you've uncovered things that were totally unexpected. Can you give us any stories or anecdotes of some surprises where you went into a client and you were expecting one outcome and you took a left turn and it was like totally different than what you expected?
That's what I love about sales, right? Is you never, no sale is exactly cookie cutter like the other sale, right? I like the understanding what's the customer's pain points. The greatest wins, the things that I get most excited about is when we do sign the customer up and they gain visibility into what they have, and we bring to their attention like, hey, you've been paying for this. We had one customer like this OC12 that you've been paying for that was billing $40,000 a month that hadn't had usage for the last 2 years. And the minute we showed them the details, we showed them the invoice. The invoice only had a circuit on it, right? Just a circuit number, $40,000. No one wanted to turn that thing off because they said this must be for something important.
Right.
But once we showed them the usage, what is connect, that, hey, this isn't needed, they canceled it immediately. And that was $500,000 right there within the first week of them putting that invoice in our system. I think that getting wins like that, that's when okay, this customer truly had a need and we told them we would help them and we proved it. And that's what makes, it feel so good is when you're able to provide that out.
How about a time when maybe something didn't quite work out the way that you thought it would?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the story of my life, right? I've got a biblical and theological studies degree and a master's in pastoral counseling. Ended up getting fired from one job. They had a personnel shift, and so I ended up in telecom, thinking like, this will get me through schooling to now be here 2 decades later, still in telecom and the expense management world. So I think you just have to, with the flow of that, you're always going to have things that don't go as expected in life, even on your opportunities, right? So, part of being in sales is losing, right? And you can be a bad loser in life or you can be a good loser, and you learn a whole lot more from losing, right? And I really appreciate the customers when I lose that they take the time and they come to me and they say, hey, here's why you lost. Some of them are valid, some of them are probably not, but what it teaches me is, okay, I didn't do a good job explaining XYZ if it's not valid, right? So it's a learning experience in that from a sales perspective. But also times it lets me help set Tellennium's direction of saying, hey, maybe that was a good loss. Not every deal is a good win, right? If it stretches the company, if it puts you guys at a place that, hey, you oversold your capabilities or services, that's not a good win. It's not a good win for the customer because you oversold them. And it's not a good win for your company because you're stretching them beyond their needs and you're setting them up for failure within there. So, but on the ones you do lose that maybe you can help direct your company saying, hey, if we're going to win these in the future, here's the capabilities we have to have within there. So I think constantly in sales, being a good salesman is being able to react to, when things don't go as planned, and that's maybe losing that deal. But that's what makes you a better individual and a better company overall, is losing those deals so you can help set that direction for the company.
Is there any advice that you would give some listeners in terms of, hey, we're looking for some short-term or quick fixes to save money? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so shifting kind of gears here from that sales mentality to just more of management of accounts. A couple of things. You can't manage what you don't know, right? So step one is gain visibility into what you have. Whether that, that's what we do on the Tellennium side. First thing we do, we collect the invoices, we build a detailed inventory, and we show them, here's exactly what you have. Here's every POTS lines, every circuit, every utility meter, every SaaS license, right? Here's what you have. From there, putting in exposure to say, okay, then you can start saying, is this needed, right? Does this belong to a location that you still have? Is this actually connected? For instance, on circuits, we'll do dial down tests. This is a ring no answer, right? We'll look at usage reports. We'll look at current rates. So Only when you start to understand what you have can you really start to make effective decisions in there. And I would say get very granular on details, right? So it's one thing for me to tell you to go cancel that analog line. If you don't know what it goes to, you're not going to take action to it. But if I can tell you, hey, this is a fax machine, hasn't been used in the last 2 years, it's sitting in this office cubicle, and we did a ring down test on it, and it was a ring no answer, like it's not even connected, right? It's not even picking up. Well, it's much more likely you're going to say, yeah, go disconnect this, right? Versus, hey, this is a security alarm. There's a reason why this hasn't been used because, the building hasn't been breached, right, since the last test on it. So that's the type of data that I say it all starts with visibility, Joe. Start with that, and then you can make effective decisions.
So inventory is really key, is what you're saying. But then I guess a common fallacy is a lot of people consider this as just a service where you would check the invoice to see, okay, is the invoice accurate? But you're saying before you even look at the accuracy of the invoice, you're looking at, is it valid? Does it work? Is it a service that's actually working, as well as is it a service that's needed or not
Yeah,
needed?
sure.
Was it disconnected years ago or not?
Yeah, so it's a great point. So we do start often, Joe, with invoices because we start to say, here's what you're being billed for. Let's start there. Here's all the services you're being billed for. But then we kind of put the invoice on the side and we say, let's go build out all the details. What location is this connected to? What is it used for? What's what's the purpose of the circuit? And then what contract is this attached to? After we have all that information, then we go back to the invoice and validate, is this actually billing correctly, right? Because if you don't know the contract, you don't know whether that invoice bills correctly or not. And you're just simply doing, okay, does this invoice match last invoice? Yes. Well, if last invoice was always wrong, you're never going to get it corrected if you don't start by building that baseline and gaining visibility.
And you're saying that most organizations then don't even have a handle on their inventories.
Yeah, I would say, as I always joke, most organizations, you ask them, you say, how's their inventory? They say, good, it's about 80% complete. You get in there and you find out it's about 40% complete. That's very normal within there and to be expected. Inventory is always changing. They're buying new locations. They're getting in, these services they never knew. And even vendor records are incorrect a lot of times, right? So you're having, you think you have it, getting some from a vendor and you find out, no, that's not actually what's installed there. It's piecing all of these pieces together to get that accurate view in their environment.
Wow. Okay. What's the one piece of advice that you maybe received over the years that you think was really valuable, or maybe it wasn't valuable and you found you had to do the exact opposite of it?
Yeah. So with my background, Joe, I mentioned it before that I have a background in biblical and theological studies and pastoral counseling. I never wanted to be a salesman. I saw salesmen as being dishonest and sleazy out there, the typical car salesman. And Christopher Core, who's an ETMA member, he was my VP at the time and been a mentor of mine. And he came in and he said, Shawn, a good salesman is an honest salesman because that's who someone will buy from again. And that made a lot of sense to me. And that has held true in my life, Joe, is, honesty is always the best way, even if it means it's going to cause you to lose an opportunity.
Gotcha. Okay. What sort of business goals does Tellennium have going forward for the next year or so?
Yeah, so we've been on a very fast growth projection. So we're very much monitoring this where we don't want to grow too fast and not be able to keep up with the growth. But
Wait, you're worried about growing too fast?
Yeah. So with that said, Joe, we have a very small sales team with that to help limit our growth. But even with that said, we are growing between the 20 and 25% growth rate year over year. Our projection for next year is 25% with the limited sales team. So that, Joe, that's where I'm saying we don't want to grow too fast. We could grow faster. We could hire more salesmen. to be able to go hit the market with. But we need to ensure that we provide good support to our customers and new customers within that. So that's our plan from the sales perspective is, our goal is to always keep operations busy, implementation busy on their side, and make them go, another deal, but not do it too much, Joe, to where they can't support it.
Nice. Okay. So that 20 to 25% growth rate with a limited sales team, what do you attribute such? I mean, that's a pretty big growth rate, and you're not a company that just started last year. Tellennium's been around for a long time, so you're building that growth year over year. What do you attribute that growth rate to?
Yeah, I wish I could pat my own back, Joe, and say, "Hey, I'm been a great leader in this aspect," but really, I stepped into really the perfect environment to be able to grow sales. So when I first stepped in, Tellennium was really the name wasn't out there. We didn't have any external sales going. It was all word of mouth. So someone liked your experience, they moved to another company, they would bring us on within it. But Tellennium's product, I think, is the best in the market. Shows very well. They do enhancements very well, and they have very happy customers. And so you put happy customers and a product that shows well into now an external sales team that's actively outselling the solution. It it kind of paved the road for fast growth in that. And continually our names getting out there more and more as we hit the market with the external sales, and more people are looking at our solution and seeing how how great it truly is. We have the references to back it up, which always is needed out there. And so those two go hand in hand of having an excellent product and great references to be able to back it.
Any other differentiators that you would call out?
I'd say one that has kind of separated us from a lot of the traditional technology expense management firms is we also do utilities and SaaS licensing and cloud. So our flexibility there to support more than just the traditional telecom has definitely helped set us apart in the marketplace and help aid in that growth. When customers can come to you, like I said, not have multiple solutions, but have that single solution provider, that really helps. Another thing that's helped us, Joe, is there's been a lot of acquisition. Acquisition always helps us when your competitors are merging with other competitors or with other companies, because that creates an environment to where they may have to change platforms, and if they have to change platforms, they're going to go examine the market. And so it just creates more opportunities for you to show your differentiators in your solution in that.
But Tellennium was acquired recently, weren't you?
So Tellennium, kind of different. We took an investment from a company by the name of NetSpark, but NetSpark was not a telecom expense management company, right? So they're building really an overall platform of carrier services. So your MSP, being able to go out and source your telecom network for you, all in a single application. And so now they can provide the expense management, plus they can provide all the consulting for your network and what provider is best for you, and they can track it all in MOT for the customers. So it was really, we kind of filled the box that they were missing on the expense management side. But to tell you the great thing, which I don't know if we expected this benefit as much, but they have access to a lot of the vendors' back-end systems. So we're able, for example, to go into AT&T's back-end system, automatically pull contracts. You don't have to work through a AT&T rep directly. We're able to do this, with other vendors as well, and that has streamlined our implementation. And getting all the way back to a couple questions ago, helped us provide that visibility back to the customer. So something pretty exciting there, through that relationship.
So how do they get access to the contract? Get quicker access to the contract?
So they have access because NetSpark is one of AT&T's largest partners out there. And so traditionally you would go through, a customer portal to place an order. Well, they have the ability to place and to sign up AT&T, orders directly to install them. And so they have access to AT&T's back end system. So they can pull the carrier agreements directly from their back end, what these customers don't have access to. So we've been able to benefit from that in our implementation. We don't need to go to the customer and say, hey, send us all your contracts. We can go right into the carrier portal and pull them all down directly from there. We see it all the time, right? You ask them for their contracts and they're like, I didn't sign that. I don't have a copy of it, right? Which I get, right? Even in my own world, I'm always signing different things, right? For this contract or LOA, and you think of all these circuits that these large organizations are placing, there could be a new contract for every single circuit that they order. And so to keep up with that, and especially if that was 3, employees ago, your predecessors on there, and to say, okay, I know it's housed in some email inbox, but I don't have access to it, where we can alleviate that now and just go pull it directly from the carrier.
Gotcha. So if you had a billboard, what would you put on that billboard to advertise Tellennium if you were walking in Times Square or somewhere with this billboard with just a few words that you could put on there?
3 things. I'd say gain visibility to save time and save money, right? So, that's what we provide. We give them visibility, and then we automate their invoice management, cost allocation, payment, and then we save them money by bringing recommendations back to them for us to take action on, for them to approve.
Okay. And let's just get a little personal now. So are there any things that you did growing up that resemble what you do today?
Well, I was always a negotiator growing up. I remember taking a trip to Cancun, going in the market, and having a pack of gum, right? And I'd use anything to negotiate with them. They'd say, "Oh, this was $5," and I'd say, how about $2 and a pack of gum, right? So I love the art of negotiation, the back and forth within that. That's something I've always enjoyed and continue to do that. I never thought I would make it part of my career to do it. But, with that, one thing that I've learned is I used to always think negotiation, to come out as a winner, you had to get the best deal. And I've kind of changed in that mentality. A good negotiation is doing what's in the best interest of my company and the best interest of the other company I'm doing the deal with. If we can ever align those 2 best interests, then that's a good deal, right? Versus taking advantage and really, getting something for the cheapest price or something like that.
Gotcha. If you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self, or what do you wish you could tell your younger self?
I don't know. There's definitely a lot of life lessons that I could go out and say within that. My faith is very important to me. I'd probably steer myself closer to my faith in my younger years, Joe, just stay true to that throughout my life and the importance of that. So that's probably what I would, direct it to. I never thought I would be in sales, like I said, but that's what I was in biblical and theological studies and took that career. But I've also learned that it's you can have an active faith in the enterprise environment, right? And that's needed, especially in sales. That's needed because I think that's a rare thing to have do sales in a high integrity manner.
So if we flip the script and had your younger self listen to this podcast and they were able to go forward in time, aside from the fact that you have this background that's kind of surprising and you're in sales, any other surprises that would, where they would be like, wow, I wasn't anticipating that he'd have that kind of a career. I'd have that kind of a career path.
Yeah, I think I would be like, man, the guy sitting at a desk doing sales, like that doesn't sound fun. But I've really enjoyed it. I wanted to be a professional bass fisherman when I was a kid, and hard to have a family while you're on the road all the time. So, may have directed them to say that. But if I were to talk to a kid today, Joe, I would say get in with a career at a young age. So if you see yourself, doing business, get in with a company and start doing that at a young age. You don't need, I probably nothing against servers, but when you're in college, you can get good money being a server, but maybe don't invest in being a server and start working for a company, because it takes a long time to be able to work your way up in a company. And that's how I got into it, right? I started off with help desk, and then I became a client manager, and then I became, a solution architect, and then I became an account representative. Kind of went through all the different phases through that career. And the younger you start, the before you know it, you can be in the role that you really want to be. So many times people think if I go to college, I can get the role I want. And that's just not the case. There's something to be said about experience for it.
Gotcha. Any particular key skills or knowledge that you think are really going to be critical for success in the next few years?
Yeah, Joe, I know we were talking earlier, and I think we talked a lot about AI. And I really think understanding AI in the market and continue to stay up to AI is something that I think is going to be critical. AI is constantly changing. Every day there's a new AI application. There's a new algorithm that comes out. There's a new way to apply it to the business. And so, I do not consider myself to be an expert on that. I have much more talented people in AI on my team that take advantage of it. But I think, as our next generation comes up, and even those who are looking to make themselves more valuable in the marketplace, man, if you can go out and do some self-research on AI out there, become knowledgeable on it, you're going to be light years ahead of the rest of your colleagues.
So artificial intelligence is going to be really, really important to learn a lot and be able to apply it into work, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe.
So you mentioned bass fishing. Any other hobbies or things that you're passionate about outside of work?
I continue to fish a lot, any chance I can get. Also love to hunt. So you'll find me out west almost every year. This year I have an Alaska caribou hunt that I'm heading out on. So between that and then also love to spend a lot of time on the lake. So if I'm not fishing, you'll probably find me on the boat, wake surfing behind it, or just floating in the water. Hey, if you need to get in touch with Tellennium, you can get a hold of us at www.tellennium.com. Tellennium is TELLENNIUM. Or you can send an email to sales@tellennium.com, and that'll get to us as well, Joe. But would love to, if people, want to learn more about us, love to show them a demo of our application and talk. Even if they're not interested in our services, but would like to partner together, always looking to partner with companies.
Well, this was really informative. I had a lot of fun talking with you. I learned a lot about you. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Had a great time.
ETMA Tech Talk podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes research, collective wisdom, and action. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions from the market's top problem solvers, making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.